So Rob, I'd love to know, I was thinking there's so many questions I'd like to ask you, but to start off with, it would be amazing to learn about your process of writing the book, like what got you to write the book, what steps, what experiences you have that kind of led to the realizations that you wanted to write a book, and what outcome did to what it.
Yeah, so I guess it started because I kept reading people like Bill McKibben and Naomi Klein and climate change writers who I really admire. I kept noticing this sentence that would pop up where they'd say climate change is a failure of the imagination.
Mm.
And then they'd move off on to talking about something else, and I'd be left there thinking, whoa, that was interesting. What do you mean by that? How do you mean? And why would we be having a failure of the imagination? I don't like what does, and no one ever then really went into it any more than just using it as a kind of a throwaway statement, And then I read some research which suggested that we had seen this sort of peak in imagination around the mid-90s, and that IQ had then kept rising in imagination and had then started to decline and has declined ever since. And I thought, wow, this, when that was published, it was a big story in America, and people said, what does this mean for economic growth? And what does this mean for Hollywood? But no one ever said, what does this mean for climate change movements and social justice movements, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I just started kind of collecting things and reading things, and then having conversations with people saying, I've got this idea of writing a book about imagination and the decline of imagination and why we need to rebuild our collective imagination. Is that something anybody would want to read? Is that something that I should do? And everyone I spoke to said, very interesting. Yes, that's a good idea. So so I spent then a couple of years really doing all the research. I did more than 100 interviews. And the way that I like to work is to do all of my kind of working out in public as I'm going along. So all of the interviews that I did, I published onto robhopkins.net, the blog that I do, as podcasts and as transcripts. And I really like working in that way. Although the danger with it, when you're writing a book about imagination, is that everybody reads what you put out and go, oh, you're writing a book about imagination. Have you heard of da-da-da? And have you read da-da-da? Because it can go off in so many different directions. And the pile of books by my bed got bigger and bigger. And the number of people, I was like, oh, I must interview them. I must interview them. Just got longer and longer and longer. And it was it wasn't the beginning process of writing. It wasn't that straightforward because for the first time I was working with an agent, a book agent, which I've never done before. And he was like, well, I need an outline that I can take to publishers, but he never told me what that kind of outline would look like. So we spent about 8 months trying to write it, and I'd write something and he'd go, yeah, no, not like that. But would never really tell me quite what it was like. And after I'd done 5 drafts, I realized that we had created the perfect conditions to kill the imagination of a book that I was trying to write about imagination. So then when I got together with Chelsea Green, who were the people who published it, and they had the most amazing editor, and then it was a really sparky, beautiful kind of collaborative relationship. And then it actually wrote itself quite quickly, really, because I had tons and tons of notes. And it was really an enjoyable thing to do, because the thing I realized afterwards was that most of the books that you read about climate change tend to interview all the same people. And what I really loved about it was that I realized afterwards that I did about 110 interviews, but only about 10 of those people had I heard of before I started. So it was a real kind of journey of curiosity and exploration for me as well. I'd read something and I go, oh my God, that person's got a piece of the puzzle. I need to talk to them. And then they would lead on to someone else. And so there was lots of just following random things and going to visit places like the street with the kids playing and different projects like that. Yeah, that's about it really. So I guess it kind of took about 2 years start to finish, and I was very lucky that I got some funding from a foundation in Belgium who kind of supported me to do that. So I had the time and the space to really give it the kind of the attention that it warranted.